Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just start by saying there's a 19th century novel by an author called Anthony Trollope, and it was called Redux, Phineas Redux, sorry, and that was the first example of the expression, the difficult we can do straight away, the impossible takes a little bit longer. Now the reason why I said that is because with the thought of flying into Langley Park, everybody said to me, no, you never do that again. That'll never ever happen. Oh, by the way, I have to mention to you as well, I had a look recently at the last talk that I gave for the old Fliers, and I spoke a little bit quickly, so if I'm talking too fast, just get me to slow down. I've been told that. But before we go into that, I wanted to tell you a little story about an 80-year-old man who went to the doctors and said to the doctor, "Doctor, I'm thinking of marrying a 20-year-old girl." "Well, that's amazing," the doctor said, "but why would you at 80 want to marry a 20-year-old girl?" He said, "Well, I want to pass on my genes. I want an heir for my various estates." Oh, the doctor winks at him and says, "Well, it's a good idea." He said, "But I would take a boarder, get in a boarder, to help you out with things." And he goes, "Oh, well, that's a good idea." A few months later, he comes back to the doctor, and the doctor says, "How's things?" He said, "The missus, she's pregnant. It's great." And he said, "Oh, did he take a boarder?" And he said, "Yeah, she's pregnant as well." Okay, so that's more to relax me than you guys. I've got to get you. Okay. All right, so we'll start with the first one. The reason why this all came about was that the Bennisons, who were a couple of the grandchildren of Sir Norman Brealey, approached the Aero Club about 12 months ago and asked if we would be interested in commemorating the 100th anniversary of Sir Norman Brealey establishing a flight virtually from Geraldton to Derby for the Postal Service. Now, we at the Aero Club, we said, yes, we'll do that, so we gave it a go last year, and we flew up to Derby and back again, had a fantastic time. There was 20-something aeroplanes that took part. This is at Onslow Airport. They even put a great big sign at the back of it. But I think Ray Challen, our president's already spoken to you about that, so I won't go on linger too much on there. But you see the airmail bag, that's the one that you see that's behind in a frame on the staircase. I managed to put that in a frame afterwards, not lose it. Okay, so Sir Norman took off from Langley Park, which is history, we all know that. We got talking about it, and I thought to myself, let's give this a go. And that's when people said, no, that'll never happen. No. I even asked a very important instructor here, and he said, well, yeah, whatever, it could work. I contacted CASA, and they said, well, this is what you need to comply with. Virtually this. They wanted me to make sure that the people that owned the land were okay with me flying into there, and that we had something in place to stop the Joe Public, from just meandering onto the place when we're trying to land. So, the thoughts, got a few ideas in my head. That one is I think that's the original letter to CASA, or it might have been to Perth, I can't remember now. So then Perth asked me for some basic information, and this was the start of map drawing, like you wouldn't believe. The CAD program that I used, obviously none of you use CAD programs because that's paint and dead simple. So what I did was I produced that. Now, interestingly enough, up here I put as an example that the typical winds of that time and temperatures of that time would be around about 30 degrees, about a 15-knot wind coming from the southwest. And we'll get to that a bit later on, but it actually worked exactly like that. So I worked all the figures out for the Tiger Moths to land there. Right, we'll go to the next one. So then I had to do a drawing. I had to go and measure up from Barrack Street through the full length of Langley Park, up to Plain Street, and then from the other end do it that way as well. Now I don't know why, but there's a third slide in there which is slightly different from the first one, but I think it just gave it a little bit more detail. As you can see, we're starting to get into one of these drawings. It looks simple enough, but it takes a little bit of time, as you're probably aware. And obviously, I'm not an engineer of any sort of drawing whatever. So how are we going to stop the public from, once we've decided that the runway was large enough, how are we going to stop the public from going onto the runway when we're trying to land? The Aero Club has got a very, very good relationship with both the MGTC Car Club and the Mustang Owners Club of WA. So a little light came on in my head and said, well, why don't we get these guys to park their aeroplanes on the park, nose to tail with a gap in between, and their drivers can stop people from meandering on. Bear in mind, we hadn't planned to advertise this outside of the small sphere of the club and the clubs that were involved, because that's a whole new ball game when it comes to compliance and getting things allowed to be done. So we went ahead. I went to the Mustang Club and I went to the MGTC Club and asked them if they were interested, and they jumped at the opportunity, because anything to do with driving on Langley Park, let alone flying on Langley Park, was what they wanted to do, which was good. I needed to mark it out. So I sent them a couple of samples of what I would like to use to mark it out. And which one do you think that they picked? Any ideas? The paint. Right, the paint. And I got the shock of my life thinking, oh, goodness me, what happens if, it stains the grass and everything? Anyway, it turns out that wasn't a good idea anyway, using the paint, because you couldn't see it. Oh dear, oh dear. Okay, so from the paint, we had to give a risk management to Perth, and then public liability insurance of $10 million, which only cost about $330, which I was quite surprised at. However, that kind of insurance, if you're doing any of these sorts of functions or events, go for these event function people. They do a fairly cheap insurance. I don't know how it would have been if there'd been any claims on it, but at least we satisfied what this council were after. They needed a noise management plan. Now, to get that actually worked out would have been extremely expensive. Extremely expensive. But it just so happens, and it wasn't because I'd asked this bloke to fly the other Tiger, but he managed to come up with this, and that's John Douglas, who's sitting just there. John has been a mentor, and I guess I can call him a friend for the last 30 years in flying. He was silly enough to send me first solo back in 1988, and he still actually flies with me occasionally when I do an AFR, or an FR as they call it now, flight review. So John came up with this chart that had been worked out some years before at Murrayfield. Perfect, just what we needed. Perth accepted that, and then I had to write a letter to the police. I believe that was the police. And there's an events page on the police website, and if you go into the police website and have a look at this events page, it doesn't specify landing Tiger Moths on Langley Park. So, well, I figured, where's the box that ticks landing Tiger Moths? No, it wasn't there. So I wrote this letter to them, and hand-delivered it to the police central. So this is for you. Right, no worries, mate. And he just chucked it on top of a box. I don't know whether anybody actually picked it up and read it. I don't think there was any police there. Those of you that were there, did you happen to notice any police presence? No, nor did I. Probably just as well. Okay, so then once we'd getting a little bit closer, bear in mind this started on the mid-June. I started all this stuff, and we were still trying to wait for the approval from Perth, and the number of emails backwards and forwards that I had with them was absolutely incredible. When I was talking to the car clubs, they said, "Oh, look, when you're doing all the speeches and things, what are we going to do? And what are we going to do when you're all over there?" And I said, "Well, okay, so we'll get the Mustangs to drive along and park there for during the speeches, so they can be a part of it, and then drive back around it again, so that we can take off afterwards." And that worked a treat. Those guys were so they were so well disciplined. It just worked a treat. It was fabulous. Right, okay. So then they needed a drawing. Perth needed a drawing, the exact drawing as to where they were going to put the two little 3x3 gazebos for sunshade. So I had to submit a drawing for there. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm giving you the full impression that every time I had to speak to them, I had to submit a drawing of some description for one thing or the other. So I got quite au fait with the old paint. Right, this one is to the residents of the local area. I had to virtually write the letters to them, and I was expecting to have to print 500 copies and go around the mailboxes and put them in, one and all. In fact, if that was going to happen, I was going to get the other bloke that was flying. You didn't know that, did you, John? Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Now, the next thing was that with all, there would have been nearly 100 cars backwards and forwards on Langley Park at the time. However, the one vehicle that was helping set up had to have a permit to park just off, on the grass, but just off Langley Park, which I thought was quite silly, quite ridiculous, but it's how they wanted to play it. And so we had to apply for a permit with all the information on there, registration and everything. So the people that did that was Gary Evans and Hayden Burnham, two very dedicated club members. Right, okay, so one of the other things that we had to do, because the lady I was dealing with at Perth City, she was a little bit concerned about what sort of height these aeroplanes are going to come in at. She thought that we were going to start round about, where Shepperton Road splits from Albany Highway. She thought that was kind of like a jumbo jet coming in and was going to tear the roof off every single vehicle going past. When I advised her that it was probably going to be like 5 or 6 over Plain Street, it'll be like the height of 5 or 6 Transperth buses, she was not only surprised but pleased. But then she asked me to produce a sign, and I'm thinking, yeah, just a little sign. I've got the sign here, hang on. That's one of the 2 signs that we use. As you can see, there's a couple of bolts at the bottom, and that was so that they could plant in the sand so that the wind wouldn't blow them away, while people were actually holding them for the 2 seconds while we came in over the top of Plain Street, and then when we were leaving again. Absolutely crazy, but we did it. And as you can see, I'm not a sign writer either. Okay, so on the 9th of December, bear in mind we started this in June, the 9th of December we were given the permit to actually do the flight in. In all this time, as I said, I'd asked John Douglas if he would fly the other aircraft in. I asked him because I'm very proud of my association with John, but also I think that it would have been a big tickle for him. And I kept it down to 2 aircraft, not just because we had the 2 aircraft available at the club, but otherwise it might have turned into a little bit of a circus if there was any more people. There were a few people that were not jealous, but a little bit miffed because they weren't asked. I do apologise, but had I said there was going to be 4 or 5 aircraft flying in, I think there might have been a little bit more of a hiccup in getting this to happen. Because remember, we did this not just because we wanted to fly Tiger Moths into Langley Park, but because we wanted it to be an important showing for the anniversary of Sir Norman Brearley's flight, the 100th anniversary of Sir Norman Brearley's flight. So that's the reason why we did that. So John and I went out more than once to Langley Park, measured up display and clearances and everything that we had, and these are some of the drawings that we came up. Right, okay, now I'll just point this out. If we were coming in via from the west, we would we'd come in over the river, we'd do an inspection, come around virtually crosswind, downwind, base, land, and then go off to the left, taxi down. When we were both down, we'd taxi back to the area where they were doing the speeches, excuse me. There are, of course, a couple of hoofing big buildings up here somewhere. So that would have been really exciting coming in, but quite fortunately, the wind was blowing from the other direction. So we came along the river. Around about here, I asked permission to check on the ground to make sure everything was clear, and I was told yes, it was clear. So it was all good for landing. But we did an inspection anyway. We came round then base, downwind, crosswind, downwind, base and final, and then popping over to the left. So that was the drawing that we were going to use. We needed a windsock. Now, how many bombs have we got in the room? Many? So do you know what a Belisha beacon is? Right, you all know what a Belisha beacon is. Those of you that don't know what a Belisha beacon is, that's the orange beacon that flashes at the crosswalk in England, or used to. I don't know whether they still use them or not now. And I finished making, because I made this from scratch, and even sewed the windsock, would you believe? And I'm not a needleworker either. And when I looked at it, I thought, side on, it looks like a Belisha beacon. So I don't know, there might have been something at the back of my head. The round bit to hold the actual sock open was a, how can I describe it? You know when you want to stop the splatter of fat coming out of a pan, and you have a meshed circular thing? Yeah, well, I went and bought one of those from IKEA. I cut the mesh out and then sewed the thing to there. So there you go. You can do anything with anything really if you try. Things don't put me off easily. Okay. So this is the start of the fuel plan that we had. But then I figured that, heck, we're only going to do a 15 to 20 minute flight out, a 15 to 20 minute flight back. Unless I've got a leak in the fuel tank, I really don't need to do much with the Tiger Moth. So now we get onto the flying side of things. While we were doing the inspection run, there was a media helicopter, as you can see, that little, this time, see the media helicopter. He isn't flying in formation because, as you can see, I think it's a Bell 2 or something or other, and he's a fair way back from us. And that's just going over the top. Somebody managed to get a picture, and a lot of these pictures are donated by people from the Mustang Club and the MGTC Club. And that's John going over. Right, okay, now I don't know whether you can see from there, but I was told, yes, everything's clear, and as I got to the end of downwind, I looked across and there's some clown walking across. There's always one, isn't there? There's always one. Right. But anyway, now I'm going to go through these next pictures fairly quickly because it's just a sequence, and if it looks like it's gone backwards, it's because I've just got them slightly out of sequence, so I do apologise. So there you go. That's short final, even shorter final still, shorter final still. It's only about. Now, there's 3 pictures similar to this. There's that one, and there's that one. The reason I put them in there is because I love them. I think they're great pictures. I would love to say that is the approach of a perfect 3-pointer, but actually, if you look closely, you can see that there is a bit of cross control there. There was a wind coming from the left, of course, but I think that was just after a bounce. But it doesn't matter. I shouldn't admit all that, should I? Right, so then we go past, and this picture was taken from up a height, obviously. Wasn't taken from underground, by one of our members who lives out in that area. Right, and then John comes in. Now, John will disagree with me, but I thought that we both agreed to do a short field landing, and for some reason, I just happened to look over to him. I pulled over to the left and looked over to the right, and John was just passing me, slowing down, and I thought, oh, I better go and follow him. Perfect landing. The difference being is I did a 3-pointer and John did a wheeler. Probably that was the better thing to do in those crosswind conditions, but we both got down in one piece. And that's both of us just coming up. You can just see that there's prop stop there and it's just about to stop there. I'll go through these fairly quickly. Wonder who that is getting out of there. Yeah. There's a very proud me inside, if not on the outside. And I think that tells the picture. There's John and myself. 2 tigers. Oh, here's some of the cars. I'll go through them quickly. Some absolutely gorgeous cars there. A pink one. I didn't remember that. Okay, so I think Ray might have made mention of this. He was given the job of doing a bit of a speech, Ray Challen, our president, and Jeffrey Thomas was the MC, and quite pleased to do the MC. Here's some of the then CPL students from the club. These people here, they were all they were relatives and friends of not only Sir Norman Brealey, but of other people that were in that flight from Geraldton through to Derby originally from 100 years ago. Relatives, not the actual people, of course. Well, I just thought I'd clarify. While we were on the ground, a flight of 4 aircraft flew over the top. There was Werner Bullman, Gail Nalen, Bob Grimstead, and Mike von Bertosch in the Stearman. They came over and gave us a bit of a display a couple of times around, and that's a picture somebody took from the mall. Getting ready to go. Now, I had a little bit of trouble getting my airplane started. I found out subsequently that it wasn't anything wrong with the airplane, it was the way they were trying to start it. But anyway, we won't go into that one. So there we are, taxiing, and we had a little bit of a delay before we could get going. There was a couple of aircraft flying over the top, so they wanted us to wait. But eventually we got going. Now, there's this picture here. I had no idea how tall these Norfolk Island pines are, and they are extremely tall. However, the perspective that photograph was taken was from up a height. So as you can guess, I have to use it. Now, funny enough, I don't know if any of you know that when you have a formation flight, it used to be whatever you wanted to use, whatever name you used to use. Might have been missing. Sometimes we used to use missing, so missing formation, which was or Tiger formation, or Piper formation, Cessna formation, Club formation. But now you can't do that anymore. You have to use the call sign of the lead aircraft. So we went out of Jandakot as Foxtrot Alpha Sierra formation, and we entered Perth airspace as Brealey formation. So figured that one out. They were okay with it, but Jandakot wanted to stick with it, and that's fair enough. That's the way it is. So we managed to get off the ground. As you can see, the white caps on the Swan River there, which gives you an idea of how windy it actually was. So much to the point where we did sort of sit and think about it a little bit before we left, but we still went anyway. And that's the last picture that I've got to show you. Overall, it was an extremely exciting experience because I had to meet a lot of people, meet a lot of new people, talk a lot of talk, and walk the walk, as they say. I had something in the region of 700 emails. That's stuff that I'd sent and received. Honestly, it's a crazy amount of paperwork that's done. However, I would not say that it was impossible to do it again. And I heard on the news yesterday that even our mayor is trying to encourage new ideas and things are happening. So somebody might be a little bit more intrepid than me, because the next time it happens, the people land at Langley Park, it's not going to be me organising it, I've got to tell you. It's not impossible. It's not the first time I've landed at Langley, but it's the first time I've landed a fixed-wing aeroplane at Langley Park with those massive buildings at the end, and they are quite foreboding when you're sitting looking at them thinking, well, if I don't get off the ground quick enough, where am I going to go? But you're talking about a Tiger Moth, and if you can't get a Tiger Moth off the ground and flown away in 400 or 500 meters, then you shouldn't be flying the damn things, in my opinion. And really, that's about it. But what I would like to do is I'd like to thank a couple of people for photographs. Paul Falconer West, Phil Maley, a lot of the Mokwa guys, and a special thanks to JD for coming along and enjoying the flight. And as I've said before, Gary Evans and Hayden Vernon. There was a lot of others that I haven't thanked, and I do apologise for not thanking them, but it was worth the effort, because the first time I flew into Langley Park, which was in the late 90s, there was a tear in my eye. But this time, getting in there, I thought, thank God for that. We managed to get it. Pardon me. We managed to get it in, and we've done it, and that's just what we were aiming to do. And I've got to tell you, when we came back, we had to concentrate like heck, because it was a bit blurry when we came back in, wasn't it, John? Yeah. All right, so if anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes and no. I'd say yes because it's a grass airfield, it's wide, and it's a piece of cake to land a tiger moth on a grass airfield. You know, even if you bounced and did it wrong, you know, the book said at that in those conditions, 400 meters was a landing distance. You've got 850. Okay, sure, we've got a displaced threshold, but if there was something wrong, I wouldn't worry about the displaced threshold. I'd come in, whatever. The no part of the answer to that is that those buildings are really, really formidable, and you do have to make sure that you've got your sums right, and that you've let everybody know that you've got your sums right. I think that's the important thing. It's all right saying, yeah, I can do that, no problem, but everyone's got to know that you've got to do it. I mean, even look at the new CPL rules. They don't say it has to be this size and that size. It's pilot discretion. But woe betide you if you do something wrong, you know, with pilot discretion. Because we didn't advertise it, we didn't need to involve CASA as much as we did. When I first contacted CASA, I gave them every single detail of the aircraft, the pilots, our experience, details, etc. And that's what I got back from them, as long as I complied with this, that, and that, which is what I did. Well, it was easy, wasn't it? All right, well, thanks for your time, ladies and gentlemen. I hope it's been of value.